I grew up in Argentina, and my grandmother, they had very, very little product. It wasn't like now that people have, tons of product. She had like one lipstick, one powder, one that, it was like her 3 or 4 vanity things. But she would meticulously use them and take care of them. My parents didn't know the language, so we were definitely at a disadvantage. And I felt that it was kind of up to me to help us out. It was very different in France at the turn of the century than in here at the turn of the century. So there was a big disparity on like what is acceptable, what is wearable, and all of that kind of thing. I think European women in general and South American women both are more minimalist in how they think about makeup. Probably the lowest part was when we were in New York and we had our line at Henry Bendel's for a while. A group of people that were kind of managers, whatever, were helping with the brand. We're kind of managing the brand from over there because we weren't in New York. So we hired these people to kind of manage that. And unfortunately, these people didn't have the same idea of what profitability is. So they would spend so much money on the employees and personnel because you had to have your own person at Henry Bendel's.
Welcome to What Beauty Founders Don't Know, a podcast formerly known as Jumpstart. Here, women-led, early-stage beauty brands learn counterintuitive insights to accelerate their profitability and revenue to $20 to $50 million and even $100 million without spending a fortune on ads, influencers, and reckless distribution. With your host, Rohit Banota, ex-P&G and founder of Toronto-based Jump Accelerator. Together, let's create a more conscious, humane, and beautiful planet. A woman's world. Don't forget to subscribe, click the bell notifications, and leave a review.
Hey Gabriela, I welcome you to What Beauty Founders Do Not Know podcast, which is all about what is it that early stage beauty founders do not know or find out a bit too late to turn around the ship, so to say. Earlier I used to call it Jumpstart. That's why, just like Prince, you will see, on the heading of the podcast, a podcast formerly known as Jumpstart. It's just a matter of few weeks or months, and after that you won't be seeing that anymore. So yeah, perfect. Welcome to the podcast again. And for all my listeners, I'll try my best to introduce Gabriela. Gabriela and I worked together on Bésame Cosmetics a year or so back. So I'm very well versed with her story, even though I'm pretty sure that almost everybody knows about Gabriela, especially in the indie beauty industry. People would know. But for those who don't know, she as a young girl would watch in complete wonder while her beloved grandmother applied makeup as part of her daily beauty ritual. From the swipe of a bold lip color to the dusting of rouge on her cheek, Gabriela loved how this small moment connected her, art to beauty, grandmother to granddaughter. So she loved that bond. And then she immigrated from Argentina, Buenos Aires, United States. And part that she has not mentioned on her site is that she did not know any English, obviously. And she learned everything, and now she's a master, because I remember every time we worked together, she would correct my English. I think she's developed that habit. Her fascination for cosmetics grew into passion, followed by expertise. She became a historian of makeup through the decades, studying philosophy and art direction before publishing her book Classic Beauty, The History of Makeup, and then founding Bésame Cosmetics. Embracing proven beauty tools, trends, and techniques of eras past, Gabriela has created a carefully curated line of cosmetic essentials inspired by style icons, both famous and familiar. Just like watching her grandmother apply makeup decades ago, Bésame offers authentic connection across generations so you can build looks that transcend time. And my summary of what Bésame Cosmetics is, it's if you want to equate romance for a woman, what does romance mean for a woman? That is Bésame Cosmetics. Now over to you, Gabriela. Let's start with your story. Anything and everything, all yours.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you for having me. I came from Argentina when I was 14 years old. So I had lived there for a while. So I was used to my small neighborhood, my small area, that I knew, where you had, like the baker and the butcher and the vegetable shop, and it's little tiny neighborhoods like this. When I first came to New York with my parents, we moved into the Bronx, and that was such a dramatic change from what I knew, that it was just like it could have been another world. I really, like you said, I didn't know the language. My parents didn't know the language, so we were definitely at a disadvantage, and I felt that it was kind of up to me to help us out, to help the family out, and kind of figure out how to communicate, how to navigate this new place. And so I had this small little phrase book that I had gotten in Argentina that just had kind of basically just sentences and then the translation. So it's like basic sentence. And this is how I started to learn the language, because I was kind of using it because I needed to use it. It's like how much is this? Where is the exit? What is, how do you buy that? Or very, very simplistic things. But this is kind of, I tried some sentences and they seemed to work. And so this is kind of how I got the confidence to learn more things. And I think that kind of upbringing, I think, translated well into kind of entrepreneurship, because it's really kind of a self-reliant type of thing to be an entrepreneur. You kind of need to have, number one, a higher risk tolerance than most people would, because if you don't, it's going to be very difficult, because there is a lot of risk in being an entrepreneur. It's not like somebody's paying you a salary every month. You're going out on a limb there and seeing if you're going to get return. So whether you're self-funded or you have money from VCs, that is still the case. So your tolerance for that kind of, variations and maybe insecurities has to be higher, I think. And I think my upbringing kind of helped me to be able to do that, to adapt to different situations quickly and figure out solutions. And I think because I had to do it from an early age, I think that helped me as I got older to do it in business or in whatever, things that I was doing. But like you said, when I grew up, I grew up in Argentina, and my grandmother, they had very, very little product. It wasn't like now that people have, tons of product. She had like one lipstick, one powder, one that, it was like her 3 or 4 vanity things. But she would meticulously use them and take care of them. It was kind of like, these are my things. It wasn't like I'm going to throw them around. It was just, those were her things. Grooming was really important to her, like brushing her hair, having basic grooming, the nails, the hair, the thing. And then very little makeup just to enhance things, but you always went out looking basically dressed. And I grew up with that. My grandma had her own style, of course. My mom, since it was, late 60s, 70s, when I grew up, they were doing more mod looks. So there was a lot of like boots and mini skirts and kind of, bouffant like hairdos and that kind of thing, and more 60s type looks. But I thought that they were, the most beautiful women in the world. My mom and my aunts, and that I would just admire them so much as being femininity kind of embodied. And that's what I remember when I was young. And I didn't necessarily, when I came here and I, started my career, starting off, I was a photographer and then a graphic designer. And I worked as a designer for many years. But I never saw in the market here the type of femininity that I had seen in South America and in Europe. I mean, there was definitely a more feminine view of products, and they were designed in a way that kind of were more displayable, pretty to look at as well as to use. And what I saw when I started 20 years ago was a lot of products that were made for function, but not necessarily beauty as far as like to the eye, to the senses. It was just for pure functionality. This works. So you put this here and it does this. But it's not necessarily pretty, you know? So it's just functional. So I thought, you know, if I was going to do something, I wanted to do something that kind of did that reminded people of that, of the pleasure of actually seeing something and being able to interact with it in a more physical way that would also give you pleasure. Not necessarily just the product, but the interaction with the product itself, which I thought was kind of missing from the things that I saw doing. So that's kind of why I started this. I started just by sketching some stuff out because I thought it would be pretty and I would enjoy it, but I really didn't have any idea to actually make it a company. It wasn't my idea to make anything because I had a design practice at the time and I had designers working under me and we had business doing designs for other people. So it really wasn't something that I was necessarily pursuing because I was doing it for other people. So I did this on the side and just very slowly I started to say, oh, well, if I wanted to make this, what would I do? You know, it's like, well, let me talk to a vendor and see if they would do it. So I kind of started down that rabbit hole and eventually I made a little tiny lipstick. That's kind of how I started the company, with this little tiny lipstick. And at the time, it was before the whole mini thing was in fashion. So there weren't any mini products. So this kind of was basically a mini. It looked like a mini, but I did it that size because that's kind of the size that was available when this product was supposed to be around. So that's why I made it that size. But, you know, some people understood what it was and other people obviously did not. The majority, the mass probably did not, but there were niche consumers that thought, oh, this is kind of neat. I like this. And those are the people that kind of followed us along and kind of propelled us to do more and more things. And that's kind of how the line developed, really, by word of mouth kind of thing.
Love it. You know, I forgot to ask you, tell us about today's look that you're carrying. Tell us about the lipstick you're wearing, the era this is from, you know, etc.
Oh, okay. Well, this lipstick is actually a World War II color called Victory Red. So it was made during the war and it was supposed to match the uniforms that women were wearing when they were in the service. So it would go with your blues or your olive uniforms. It was made by Elizabeth Arden at the time because she was commissioned by the government to actually make this color that would kind of, you know, go with these uniforms. So she promoted it as such, and it was a very famous color. I found originals and I made it again.
Love it. And I'm pretty sure the attire also is from, like, you're dressed also from that era, or no? Is this some other?
Well, the blouse, I mean, you know, these patterns were available in the 30s. I like to mix and match. I don't like to necessarily do a look that's all one era. I admire the people who do, because that is a large commitment to actually have every piece that you're wearing be from an era, you know, because you really have to be collectors. And I know a lot of people like in the Art Deco Society that really, I mean, they know their stuff, and they're kind of like really curators of this kind of thing. They collect, they're very, very stringent on exactly being correct, which is really great. And to look at an outfit like that, you could tell, I mean, there's an art to those outfits. I don't have that kind of thing, so I kind of work within the corporate structure and the art structure. I have to have clothes that are kind of more wash and wear, and I get, because those clothes are like museum clothes. You can't really be wearing them all the time because, you know, the seams are delicate. These are not your daily wear type of clothing. So I kind of mix and match my clothes to give me kind of a nod to different time periods, but it's still kind of my own style. And I think a lot of people now like to do that as well, because it's nice to be inspired by something but still be able to shop certain things that are also kind of wash and wear, so that you can wear them and they're comfortable and easy and you can travel in them and all of that. So this is kind of a mix of all of that.
Well, it looks amazing. I don't know, we must have done 20, 30 calls when, we were working on a project, and I would notice that every time, you were dressed slightly differently. I mean, in terms of lipstick, at least, whatever you're wearing. I should have started with this because that would have been the perfect introduction. But yeah, perfect. No, I love your story. I'm slightly curious. You mentioned when you came to the US, the products were not as feminine. The feel of the brand was not as feminine as you found in South America or even in Europe. Why would that be? And does it still exist? Like, do you still believe that beauty in South America and in Europe is more feminine than America? And, because we all know that America has had a very masculine corporate influence, over the years. So do you still
Yes.
believe that that's the case? And why do you think, like, I gave one reason. Was that the only reason, or do you think there might have been other reasons as well?
I think it's a matter of taste. I think the consumer taste of women is a little bit different if for European women and for South American women. I think they have different ways of thinking about beauty and different things that they consider beautiful. I mean, I think obviously there are lines that sell all over the world, larger corporate brands that sell all over, and people buy them because they're trendy and all of this. But as far as I think the taste of things, I think Europeans and people in South America, I think, appreciate things from the past a little bit more than we do here. Like they do appreciate historical things, or things that have a provenance to them, or things that have a deeper story to them. They have their own history, and they, I think, appreciate that in products, where here it's not necessarily as deep of a connection. That's what I found.
Wow, that's very interesting. And is it because, this is not a joke, is this because America, in a way, has no history because it was the new
It's
world,
young.
right?
Yeah, we're young, and that's really, I think that's partly why. I think because we are very young, we just don't have that depth of history that you see in Europe or that you see in South America. They have a deeper roots. There's more to pull from, you know what I mean? And so all of this kind of informs design down the road. So designers that design within that environment have a lot more to design from, as far as where are they getting these ideas, than maybe we have here, even though obviously we're pulling from those same references at this point. I think they are more connected to those things. So I think it informs design in a different way. And I think that's why from the beginning here, I think cosmetic industry in general was really inspired by European products that were coming into the market, or people from here that started companies here having gone to Europe and having the idea from seeing things in Europe and then bringing it over here. Because a lot of products, a lot of companies initiated that way here.
But still, even if they brought from Europe, they were not able to lend as much femininity. They were still Americanized, right?
They were. Obviously, they had to redesign them to the flavor of what the consumer here would like, obviously, because how people behaved was very different in France at the turn of the century than in here at the turn of the century. So there was a big disparity on like what is acceptable, what is wearable, and all of that kind of thing. So yes, they would have to adapt them, because people wouldn't have just said, oh yes, everybody's wearing a lot of rouge. In Europe, we're going to wear a lot of rouge, because it wasn't that easy to get people to accept all those things, because they were way more avant-garde. They had products way before we had any products here. So they were used to wearing a lot of things that we weren't necessarily used to yet. So they had to adapt. But even products back then, I think, had more femininity and more design But slowly over time, as we got more industrialized, things became more and more pared down, basically. So all of this intricate work that was done on a compact in the 1920s is not longer done like that, because nobody's going to make a compact like that and put that much work into it. It's going to be not for mass consumption anyways. So the things have kind of whittled down, I think, to what is the least expensive and more kind of reproducible type of product. And that creates kind of a sameness, I think, in the market. So a lot of things, if you look at packaging in containers for a lot of trendy products or products in the market now, you'll see a lot of similarities between all of those containers, because they're kind of all pulling from the same pool, basically, that one person designed, not all these people designed by themselves. So you don't have the work of 50 designers, you have the work of one that's just being disseminated into 50 companies.
You dropped such an amazing insight. The first, and I have 3 questions, follow-up questions on the same. The insight was that there is a culture and big history gap in America. And that's why the Americans, you take them abroad anywhere, like to South America or India or Asia, and they go crazy, right?
Of course.
They see colors,
Yes.
they see people, they see ethnic stuff, and they go crazy.
Yes.
And all of us are like, really? Is that amazing to you? Like, we see this
Right.
every day, right?
Right. Well, because it's natural to you if you grew up there. It's a natural thing. But to people who had never seen it, it's like, wow, I never knew that this was a thing, that people did this. And that comes from travel and being exposed to things, which now is, everybody travels. But 100 years ago, people did not travel. That wasn't easy to do, especially if you didn't have the money to do it. That was very hard to travel. It was expensive. So you're left with the interpretation of whoever could travel and brought something back and then made something that was inspired. And a lot of the pioneers in makeup here did that. They brought things from European influences and their travels abroad.
Amazing. So, I also want you to dig deeper into your book, The History of Makeup. We'll cover that. Like, you'll give us examples how cosmetics has evolved. But I have one more question with the follow-up question. And before that follow-up question, I want to summarize, like another deduction that I had. Just like the manly products, the masculine products in America have reduced in quality, like the durability. If I just take durability of any electronic item that was in 80s or 70s, if you look at the same, that masculinity of the item has gone down. You are saying similarly the femininity of a product like casing, etc., has gone down. I just want to summarize that, because people, like, I would look at the old recorders or even the cars, right? You could throw them, you could do whatever, and they would still survive. So similarly, you are saying even when it comes to feminine aspect, that has also gone down in quality, right?
I think so, yeah, because we keep chasing the lowest price and more margins. The more that retailers get squeezed, they squeeze wholesalers and so on and so up the chain, and so everybody gets squeezed, and it goes down to what the actual thing is. It's like, okay, I need to make this for less. What can I do? What can I cut? Can I use a less expensive plastic? Can I use something else in it? Can you use a cheaper hinge? Can I do this and that? So the quality gets eroded because we're kind of chasing the price point down and down and down. Not necessarily because the product costs less to the consumer, unfortunately, but because all these people in between are fighting for more and more margins in between there. So that's kind of, that middle gets squeezed.
Wow.
That's what I think.
Another summary, like a follow-up summary, in capitalistic economies, when a category matures, the value you get for the particular price will go down with time, right? So the value that you could get, because like you said, the quality goes down, right? Yeah.
It has to, unfortunately, because there's nowhere else to go for the manufacturer, really, because you go to a place like a Sephora or an Ulta, and they'll tell you, well, this product has to sell for this amount of money because in your category, your product sells for X. So this is the product we're looking for, something that sells within this. Now, they want to make X amount of money, so you're already discounting their portion. Then there's all these extra costs involved in just being in that store. By the time you get down to it, the margin that you have is really, really small. At a certain point, if you don't cut the cost of the product, you cannot even sell it to them because there wouldn't be anything left, basically. You can't compete with it. So this is why you start to get erosions or things that were good. Like I've seen a lot of times, a product is really a good product and it gets very popular, but they don't have distribution. They're just selling it in a small shop, let's say. But then it gets very popular. It gets picked up by a larger chain. But then you'll see people going online and saying, the product's not the same like it was before. It won't work. It doesn't work the same way. It's something's not right. And it's because what people have to do is basically figure out how to fit this product into that framework of it has to cost X, it has to do that, when it didn't originally do so. So all of a sudden, you have to reformulate a product that's already really good into a cheaper formulation, into a cheaper container, and all the way down to get it to the price that these people want to sell it for. But again, the poor consumer, that product is not the product that they bought before. And eventually they'll figure that out and you'll start to lose those people. And that's kind of what's happened over and over again as I've seen it in the marketplace.
Wow, you have been there, done that, and this is the truth. So, before
it's
I
hard.
get to that.
It's hard to resist that, though. It's hard.
I agree.
Because, that's why we're still independent. Because over and over again, we are invited to go into one venue or another, but then this happens, and it's really up to you where you say, okay, yes, I'm going to just reformulate it and make it way cheaper, and I can sell it for that. Or I'm not. I sell this, and if you like it, that's what it is, and I refuse to lower the quality of this product, and I cannot go into that venue. It's a choice, and it depends on the person. If you really want to further the line and you're okay with that, and you think that the product is still good enough and all that, but you do have to make very tough choices when it comes to those types of relationships.
I agree. Just one last line on this. I'm tempted to say it. So competition and innovation actually drive the absolute value of a product to consumer down while keeping the perceived relative value versus what they can see in today's times as maybe as a saving grace. But ultimately, with time, the consumer is the biggest loser, maybe, with all this competition and innovation. But yeah, but that was an amazing insight, Gabriela. I've always said the amount of intelligence that you carry and you bring to your brand, even though your brand is about romance, about classic beauty, which now you have morphed into classic plus contemporary. Everybody can be part of Bésame, and any woman can feel what romance truly is. But the amount of intelligence that is driving your brand is phenomenal. And of course, you're a designer. The detail that you go into when crafting and designing, packaging your products, your lipsticks, and even if somebody goes and looks at a website, you don't have millions of dollars like LVMH's or Chanel's. But no. Your site, the aesthetic purity of your site is just purely amazing. Perfect. Moving on. Now let's touch a little bit about the history of makeup. And I also wanted one more example. You gave the example of rouge as to how the French and the Americans had a difference in consumption when it came to rouge. And maybe some of that will still remains. But give us another example of maybe South American women's beauty routine or maybe European versus the American woman. Like what difference do you see? Any other example?
I think European women in general and South American women, both are more minimalist in how they think about makeup. I don't think that they favor like more is more type of thing. They try to pare down, things so it doesn't look like you're overdone. Like being overdone is not a good thing in either culture. And I think it has to do with the fact that you still have to remain authentic. It's something I think that Europeans and South American women embrace more of an authenticity of who you are, and not necessarily trying to mask it with a lot of very artificial things. So you want to have products that enhance but not hide, you know what I mean? They're not afraid of what they look like. And it's hard to explain that, but this is how I understand it. It's like you can't be afraid of who you are if your lips are larger, if your eyes are smaller, if you have this or that. It's who you are, you know what I mean? And you can enhance things to feel confident, but you don't want to hide, and you don't want to be ashamed of any part of yourself. And I think women in other countries have more confidence in that than women here do. I think we have a lot more insecurity here, and maybe it's social media driven or it's culture driven, but there's a lot more insecurity of people like looking at tiny flaws or tiny things that they consider flaws and having just to fix everything, when it's part of the person and part of natural aging, it's part of the character of your face. And people, I think, in other places that appreciate heritage or history are not afraid of character in the way you look. And I think here we kind of back away a bit from that and want to assimilate into what the norm of beauty is, where in other places I think people are okay with being different, being the way they are, you know. So a lot of women will have a favorite lipstick, you know, they'll wear a bolder color, but they're not going to wear like, you know, 10 colors of shadow and all this other makeup on top of it, because they consider that overdone and not classy, not sophisticated. I think they consider it as it kind of draws away from their femininity, not add to it.
I have to be very honest. Whatever you said, absolutely in beauty is there, but it's also a cultural issue in America which goes beyond the feminine gender. Like here, like you just don't want to not fit the norm. In that your block has set, your building has set, your school has set, or the group that is. I've seen that firsthand, whether it's a college, it's a university. And for beauty, obviously, we could say that it's the mainstream or the corporate that has driven an ideal of beauty down. This is how we want women to look like. That is there. But I think even that is driven by, chasing one ideal. Like, having that ideal. Yes. I'm absolutely with you. When I think back, like even I come from India, I can draw the same parallels. Like there was much more acceptance for people who were different. Like we thought everyone is different. There was no need to, like you said, like become more acceptable or feel the need that, hey, I want to be accepted by others or something like that, right?
And it's weird. Yeah, it's so odd. Like here, you hear young people saying, no, I want to be individual. I want to be my own person. It's like if you stand outside of any high school right now and you look at all the people coming out of it, it looks like they're all wearing the same uniform.
Exactly.
Because everybody's wearing the same pair of jeans, the same hoodie, the same shoes, the same. It's like they're all wearing a uniform without even knowing it. And it's like, where did the individuality of this come from? Because all of them look exactly the same. And I've seen this over and over again, and I'm like, you're saying one thing, but you're doing something completely different because everybody's wearing the same thing.
You just dropped another bomb. I want my listeners to know that, like, I just prefaced it by saying Gabriela is a very intelligent, like the insights that you're drawing are just so amazing. Because of social media, these people know of all this stuff. But because they are young, they have not gone through all the stuff to actually understand what it means. They just know it. Oh. And they'll throw these words of, individuality. They get offended very easily, by the way.
Oh, they do. But it's so funny. It's like, well, this is the hoodie that everybody has to have. This brand of hoodie, this is the one. So everybody is wearing the same hoodie. this kind of shoe, everybody has to have this shoe because this is the shoe to have. And it's like, well, wait a minute, are we, then you're all wearing a uniform, right? Because you're the same. What happened to like, I'm an individual, I do what I want, I wear whatever I like. It kind of goes out the window because you're all basically buying the same things. And if you don't, you get chastised by the group. Like, well, you're not wearing the hoodie that we all need to be wearing, you know?
I agree.
Which is such a silly thing, you know, because it has nothing to do with you as a person. It's you fitting into this group and conforming to what somebody said was cool.
I agree.
But it has nothing really. There's no basis to this, which is it's just so interesting to look at that, because obviously it didn't used to be that way, because we didn't have social media. They weren't influenced by so many different people at one time. You were influenced by your close friends and people you had around you, but it wasn't like it was a collective mass thing of like everybody's wearing this hoodie kind of thing. That didn't happen. So you had a lot more individuality as to what people did or didn't do. Obviously there were, you know, styles of hair that were popular, some products that were popular, but it didn't mean everybody was wearing them. It just did not. It's not like now that you're either in or out kind of the fray.
I agree. And of course, with the younger generation, it's even worse. But I've also seen 20, 30 plus year old people. And I'm seeing this trend now across the globe too. Like I know people who are like 30, 35, and all they want is to buy the latest iPhone, the latest shoe, the latest t-shirt, the watch. And they think that's what arriving means. Like that's what doing something in life means. And I heard this amazing quote, I don't know who said it, like somebody on Instagram Reel. Collecting things creates clutter, but experiences are what you will value in the end. So people are mistaking things for what life really is, which is an experience, right?
For sure. And it doesn't bring you happiness. That's the thing. Then people think that all these things are going to make you happy, but they don't. They're just a flash of dopamine that you get from buying something that you think is cool, but then it's gone. After you bought it, that feeling is gone, and all you have is debt because you still have to pay for it. So you have no money and you have this thing, and it doesn't mean anything unless it means something to you that you can keep with you. For example, like for the longest time in South America, in Buenos Aires, and we were middle class, lower middle class growing up, and kind of a status symbol over there was like having a Rolex. A Rolex was like, you're like wealthy if you had this watch. So of course my dad, he had this in his brain. So when we came over here, when he could afford it, he bought even the cheapest version of a Rolex, because to him it meant that he had achieved something, because this was a marker, like you said, achieved a position. And so he bought one, and for him it meant something. Now for me, it doesn't mean anything, you know. So if I buy a Rolex, it's just an expensive watch that I probably don't want to wear because I don't want to be flashy outside with this expensive watch. So I don't get any satisfaction from having this watch, and I don't necessarily get anything from having other people see me wearing this watch. Like a lot of men will wear expensive watches because they want other men to see that you have an expensive watch because it means something to them. To me, I don't care what anybody else thinks. So I don't care if I'm wearing a watch and you think something of me or not. I think all possessions are kind of irrelevant unless they bring you joy in somehow, and they bring you happiness in interacting with them and using them, and you get that satisfaction on a daily basis. If you don't, I think it's a waste of monies. You know what I mean? So if you have a nice couch and you enjoy the couch and you sit on it every day and it's a comfortable couch and you like it, then great. That's worth spending money on. But for a watch that you only wear on a special occasion, I don't think that's worth my money. But people have all different ways that they associate money and wealth and what it means to be wealthy or to have things, but labels to me are not really that meaningful. They never were.
Well, that's amazing. And that's why Bésame is about an experience. It's about minimal makeup, which enhances who you truly are.
Yes.
And it's about creating that feeling of romance. When you have Bésame on, the word Bésame, for viewers who do not know Spanish, right, is the first
Yes.
kiss. So it's reminiscent of the first kiss that any woman has had when she was a teenager or whatever.
Yes.
And that's why it has that romantic feel to it.
People have so much consumption of things, but it wasn't like that before. And that's kind of what I'm trying to go back to. Like a time where you had things, you paid more money for them, because if you look at what things cost back then and what they cost now in relationship to what you make, they were more expensive. Things were more expensive, but you did not throw them away. So if you bought a pair of shoes, you didn't then throw the shoes away. You would fix the shoes and keep wearing the shoes. So the shoes were not disposable. They were leather shoes that you kept, fixing, putting new caps on it and new soles. You mended them. You kept wearing the shoes. So you got a lot more value for whatever you purchased, but you purchased better quality at a higher price and something that will last you longer. So we had less waste because there weren't people just throwing away shoes and buying new ones, because people just bought one good one. If you had one good suit, you had that suit for a long time. It wasn't like you just had 20 other suits. No, you had a few suits, but they were good, because a suit would cost you a lot of money in comparison to what people made. So it wasn't a spur of the moment kind of purchase. Nothing was really. And even makeup was expensive at the beginning, because it was made really for people that could afford it, and it was a luxury item. It wasn't like everybody wear type of item. It was a more luxurious item. Then it kind of got democratized and brought down to kind of a mass market in a different way, in a cheaper way. So it got brought down to a point where it could be sold to a mass market. But then the fancy cases and all of those things kind of disappeared into something that could be sold inexpensively into a larger marketplace. But it was still rather minimal. People did not spend, that much on cosmetics, because it wasn't something that people wore a lot of on a daily basis. It was really just an enhancement of things, like you had your lipstick, you had your powder and that. But as far as like eye makeup or a lot of other products that we wear now, that was not necessarily the norm. People did not really do that on a daily basis. Back really 30s, 40s, even 50s, not everybody wore a full face of makeup. In the 50s, people started to wear more and more cosmetics because they were more available and more marketed to women. So we started to wear more shadows and liners and all that kind of stuff. But before then, it was, again, a more minimal thing. So you relied more on your grooming and your hair and in having your clothes pressed and all of that to give you a pulled together look than just a full face of makeup.
I want an insight on this. The pricing that you mentioned versus 80s, 90s and 2000s. Has the price of makeup gone up or gone down?
No, it has gone up.
It's gone up, yeah. And the quality has gone down.
The quality, it depends on what part of the quality. Some items have gone down, and in other items have gone up, but so have the prices for those items. So I think the same thing that happens in society happens with the makeup as well. You have a lot in the high end and in the very low end.
Nothing in the middle. It's the middle that gets squeezed always.
Yeah, because if you want really nice things, nice ingredients and nice, the cost is gonna get to a point where it's more than premium. It's more luxe, really. And then if you want something really cheap, the quality is going to go down, but it's going to be very cheap, So you have kind of both ends the middle is kind of fuzzy, you know?
I agree. So, I would ask for one more amazing insight from you on the history of makeup book that you've written. Like, what is the most fascinating fact that you love talking about you've written in the book? But before that, I just want to mention you spoke about minimalism and enhancing who you are. And the fact that in America, women like to hide rather than enhance. That has been the trend. So I remember all the interviews we did with your cult following, and the response to no makeup was, what is the point? If you have to
Yeah,
spend more time than makeup or no makeup for creating a look that actually
well,
hides in the end, right? So what's the point?
exactly,
So you're making the
exactly.
same point. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, my customers are very pragmatic, intelligent women. If you tell them something like that, they're going to go, why am I bothering? It's like, if I want to look like I'm not wearing anything, then I won't. Why am I going to spend an hour trying to look like I'm not wearing anything? It's kind of a silly thing, I think. But it's trend. People do certain things. And of course, companies want to sell. They want to sell more things, not less things. So they're not going to tell you you need less. They're going to tell you you need more. You need this and you need that on the bottom and this on the top and this over there. So they sell you like 20 things instead of selling you one thing. And obviously it makes sense for economics. But I don't know if the consumer is necessarily the winner there. I mean, there's a lot of uses for makeup. If you're using it for different purposes, obviously rules change. If you're using it in theatrical uses, the rules don't apply to that. People have to do what they have to do to account for the performance and the way that things need to function for those things. So it's kind of different. But for somebody every day to have to do like some kind of ritual where they're like putting in like 20 products on, it's kind of ridiculous. It's kind of like, who has time for that? And I don't see the necessity of doing that because it wasn't necessary in the past. I don't think it's necessary now. So I think kids enjoy doing it because they have time to experiment, to play in that. So, they want to do all this. They want to like put 50 things on and that's great. That experimentation is fun. But for somebody that has to get to work and that doesn't make any sense, or somebody that has kids and doesn't have that much time to do anything, it makes no sense.
I agree. And I'll just add that out of all the interviews that I've done in the last 6+ years, or maybe, 10, 20 years of my career, I've never seen consumer base that is as passionate. So when I did the interviews and the focus groups, they all came dressed with those eras, the period dressing, if I might call it. Like they're
Yeah.
so into your brand and the feeling that you give. And even those who do not dress for the particular period or with a particular period look,
Yes.
even
Yeah.
they spend time in front of their vanity with your products, your brand, because it brings back the memories. It's just like of the grandmother applying makeup and that whole experience of what beauty truly means to a woman. I always say to every brand that I worked with, Bésame Cosmetics consumers, like when they responded to
Oh,
no makeup, everybody had
yeah.
exactly the same answer and everybody was mentioning grandmother and mother. It was like
Yeah.
so
It's
amazing. You've
crazy,
hit a
isn't
nerve
it? It's
there.
crazy. It's crazy because people, they see themselves in it. And the point is that you feel more confident, that you feel good. And that's the point of it. I feel better when I feel like I'm put together. It's like that feeling is that what the consumers are really reacting to, because it's not just the product, is I need to feel special. And using this and putting this on, or taking a few minutes to look at a beautiful container and put it on, I feel special. I feel like I'm the movie star. And people need that, especially in a time where you have so much stress of jobs and things. And I mean, there's just living is challenging. So you kind of need that headspace, because it's very hard to do this day after day if you do not feel like you are worth it, that you are special, and I deserve this kind of thing. And it's a small thing, but it makes a huge difference in the frame of mind, in how you frame the day and that, because it's very easy to get depressed in what's going on in the whole world. So people need an uplift, and this is a very inexpensive way to get an uplift.
I agree. I don't see Bésame even when shouting with a loudspeaker that we're inclusive, but I saw that in your consumer base. These are all your fans, your cult following. They are a mix of whether it's the whatever media has epitomized as the perfect looking woman, whether it is somebody who doesn't fit the picture at all, whether it is somebody who's of different shape and size. I saw all of them coming together, how beautiful they feel. And this you do without any slogans or chanting of we're an inclusive brand just to find favor with those kind of consumers. But that is a testament to what you're saying. You enhance their beauty. They feel beautiful, like you said. They're not depressed, not just by the worldly events, but also by the fact that these people get excluded by the norm that has been created in America, especially.
Yes.
So that is a testament. I have to say, Bésame is one of the most inclusive brands, and very rarely you'll see it saying that. I don't think you are shouting on top of your lungs that we're inclusive, but your products speak for themselves.
Yeah, because it's not what you say. It's not about saying it, really. That's the thing. It's not just a marketing term. And people use it as a marketing term. Oh, we're inclusive. I think you have to do it. People respond because authentically we reach out to everybody. And it doesn't matter what you look like. And it doesn't matter anything about you. It doesn't matter. Because the point is that you feel beautiful. You feel it, and that's it. That's all that it's all about. It's really about how you feel. Because if you feel that way, you project that, regardless of what you look like. That confidence, and that is about feeling it. And that's what I'm trying to get women to do, is to feel that way. And it has nothing to do with the way they look. Obviously, they want to look nice, but it doesn't matter if you're big, small, whatever. It doesn't really matter. It's about how you feel, how you come across, and anybody can. It's not really relegated to like people that are considered typically beautiful. It's not. It really, that's a misconception. There are so many people that are not traditionally beautiful and are still very famous and very successful and all that. So it has nothing to do with any of that. It really has to do with you and what you project out. And that's what I want to change with what we're doing, is I want women to project that as leaders and powerful. And if it helps them to have a really good lipstick, then do it, then put it on, It's about that. It's not about like, oh, I did this wrong, or I didn't have my liner quite right, or it's really not about that. That's the least of it. So we don't blame people or make them feel less so because they don't have the skills, or they don't know how to do certain things, or they can't apply it. It's basically what makes you feel good, and that's really the only thing that matters.
Amazing. We've spent almost 55 minutes on just one small insight of how, or did you, if you haven't already given it, I asked for like from your book, how makeup has evolved. Just one small example, and then we'll move on to other things. But yeah, we can speak about this for hours and hours, even for days. Bésame and the change you're making. And the best part is that you're not using them for your marketing, which I think should change, because you're doing such a novel thing. You should speak about it. I know it firsthand. If I were only following everything else that you're doing, maybe I wouldn't have been this aware.
Yeah.
But since I worked with you behind the scenes, give us one more insight on how makeup has evolved. Anything that fascinates you.
Well, step forward in differentiation of makeup is we started using silicones in like 80s, 90s. And before that, textures and things were rougher. Makeup was not as refined. It didn't have the kind of the smoothing qualities that it has now. You had to work a lot harder to get that look because you had to do layers of things and powders. And because of silicone and what that's done as far as like making this kind of very smooth and buttery type, better, lighter foundations, lighter lipsticks, lighter products in general, and things that take less work so it's advanced a lot of what textures and feeling and performance of makeup. So that's one of the things that has changed and been kind of a positive change as far as like formulations go. But as far as trends, it's very interesting. People think that influencers are kind of a current thing, but there were influencers back in the 1800s, in the 1900s. We had people that were influencers, that, you know, the early courtesans and prostitutes were influencers.
Really?
They were, oh, are you kidding? There was a lady in France, the wealthiest, and she was a prostitute, but her fashion, every time she went out, she had a whole new outfit and things, and everybody looked at her. And whatever she did, kind of other women would copy because the style was like, that's what men find attractive. And famous men would pay a lot of money just to sleep with her, like kings and very famous men. So she was an influencer of the time. Female impersonators, early female impersonators that performed as women but were men, they were influencers. Because women wanted to look like them, they actually developed beauty products and sold them under their brand.
Really? That's
Yes.
amazing.
Yes, it's just kind of amazing that people think, oh, this is new. It's not new. It's not. Nothing really is that new. You
Nothing
know,
ever
we
is
kinda-
new, usually.
No,
Yeah.
we kind of continue to do the same things. It's just that people forget, or people, you know, it's like things get buried in history. You forget, you don't know that there were people that were doing this back then. But there were, and not only one, several that, and they had products. They sold products and they did shows. Obviously, you couldn't say that you were gay or anything like this. It had to be kind of a performance that you did as a woman, but you didn't actually dress as a woman outside of the theater. But that person was very famous, and they made postcards of him dressed as a woman, and women wanted to look like him. The whole thing, it's not a one-time thing. This happened a lot. There were several people that performed as women and highly regarded by other women as being very beautiful, and several courtesans that were also regarded as being like the most beautiful women that men wanted to be with, and they definitely influenced fashion. And everybody wanted to. It's kind of like the equivalent of a Kardashian right now. The equivalent of a Kardashian, because whatever she did, everybody wanted to do this. And she would never look the same every time she went out, like to have tea with somebody. She would parade around with this entourage, wearing all this stuff with a parasol and a thing. I mean, very elaborate. And everybody would be looking at this. And this would set a fashion trend. So if you look at history, everything repeats. And I've seen it kind of over and over again. And in my book, you can see it when you read chapters on different decades. You can kind of see trends kind of merge, and you can look at old trends and you can see, whoa, look at this we were doing, and now I can see that we're kind of doing something similar to that.
What amazing insights. I had no idea. I'll also recommend a movie. This is off topic. I just saw on Netflix where there's this famous French designer or somebody. You must have seen it. He would change his girlfriend like every year or something like that. He lives with his sister. It's a true story, I think. They are a big fashion brand, brother and sister never married, and in the end, because he's always obsessed, like he's never able to let loose, like he's always uptight and focused on the work. In the end, the girlfriend, a village girl, she starts poisoning him every day, like frequently, and even tells him, because when she does it, he falls sick and then he stops working.
Wow.
So just to relax, and he slowly finds out that she's doing it, but he loves it because he's sick. He needs that time. And in the end, he dies. But like, what a story. It's on Prime Video or something. It's like about obsessive people and artists. So when I was looking at you, I was reminded of,
Well, there's a lot of people like that. A lot of people in history.
But so moving on, these were amazing examples. It has set the stage perfect for this marathon of a episode, because Bésame and Gabriela, just doing a short episode won't do justice to what Bésame is. So usually beauty founders are motivated by exit or becoming a 9-figure beauty brand beyond making a difference. What motivates you? You've kind of given your why, the change that you saw, femininity, you spoke about your love for history and what beauty truly means to you, and the gap that you saw, you want to take them into, which is more authentic, which is something which is more experiential. They can cherish every day and they can find those moments of happiness every day and forever in their lives. But beyond that, what is the business motive for you? And if it's the same, then it's fine. But like, what keeps you going still?
Well, I think a couple of things. One thing, definitely the customers, because obviously the feedback from the customers and the way they interact with us, it does keep you going, because the fact that people appreciate it or feel better, it's what keeps me going. But also because I love to create things, and that artistic passion is what keeps me going, because I like to generally make things. I enjoy making things, especially making things from scratch. So making everything from the case to the interior to the brush to the whole thing. I just enjoy the process of making something from nothing. My kids, when they were little, they would think it was magic. It's like, oh, look, you drew this and then it's here. It's like, well, after a long time, yes. but for them, it was like, wow. So the creation part of it is definitely, for me, is something that keeps me going. As far as the money side of things, obviously you want a healthy business. You want to be able to make profit, because if not, you can't manufacture. It's kind of the bane of every brand's existence, I think, inventory and managing inventory and financing inventory. But besides that, I don't really have an idea of like a huge exit. I think if it was too big, it might lose some of the things that make it special, because you have to, like I said earlier, make a lot of tough decisions to do that. And some of them will probably not align to that kind of business, to that kind of growth. So I'm not opposed to having the brand do that, but at that point, I probably would just sell it instead of being involved myself in running it anymore, because I don't think I could do it. It's not within my skill set. I guess I'm not trained in that way as to major enterprise. I'm aware of things, but I wouldn't say that I'm an expert at it, and I don't think I would do a very good job necessarily in running like $100 million company, because it takes a lot of other skill sets that are not my cup of tea. I'm more on the creative side. I'm more on the product side and in brand side than investors and financial sides of things. That part is not that exciting to me. I leave my husband to cover all of that part, but even he is not too enthused. People believe that's the solution to everything, to have huge business, but the more money I think that you make, or that the business makes, the more complicated things get. The complexity alone makes you have to have more people, more team, more of everything. And so it depends on what you want. If you're comfortable managing all of that, then great. I don't think I would be good at that, because I'm not really kind of a born manager of people or want to do that. I'm kind of a lone creative type of person. So I don't think my expertise would match it exactly. My personality probably wouldn't either. Because like you said, I don't like to kind of toot my own horn and things, because I'm not really that cheerleader type of person. And I think sometimes for that type of leadership, you do need somebody that has those skills. Even though I love to work with other people, but I'm not kind of rah-rah type of person.
Amazing. I like the way you framed the entire answer. I don't think you will, but usually very creative people, they would fight with everyone else if they work with bigger guys, corporate guys. Usually creative people, they find very difficult to be agreeable. You don't strike me as one, and all my experience with you doesn't seem like that. Yeah.
No, because I've worked for other people for a long time. So as a designer, I'm trained to find compromise on things. That's never my position, to be combative for people, because I want to find a solution. My main goal is to find a solution that works for both. So I try to kind of mediate and try to come up with something that works both ways, but not necessarily be fighting with, that doesn't accomplish anything actually. And in this type of business, when you're doing artwork, but that's also commercial, you kind of have to take the ego out of the whole thing and say, okay, this is how I want it, but it doesn't work. So let's change that. Maybe I have to do this instead of like, okay, I'll give up this and I'll do that. But you kind of have to be willing to make alterations to fit what you need to do. So you have to keep your eye on the goal. And what is the goal? Is to get this product made or get this done or whatever. And so fighting about details is not going to get that done. That's how I have always approached it. And I've had to work with a lot of men in a lot of corporate environments in the past. So I'm very aware of how to find common ground and how to navigate those things, because I had to do it as a younger designer.
I concur, and I attest to the same, because I saw that you were very passionate, and then we worked together, and it took time to make you come around, not because you were combative or anything, but because you had that passion. There's a certain way you wanted the brand to be, to stand for. And then when you had launched, I thought maybe she doesn't want to do it. But now that time that has elapsed, I saw that you are open to new ideas. And then, of course, you have kept the essence and the soul, but you were open to suggestions and you have implemented those. So I can firsthand attest to the same. So now moving on to advice to other beauty founders who get stuck, whether it is 6-figure or low 7 figures. You took a hit by taking your brand off Sephora, but now you're back on track to be an 8-figure brand. What were your top 2-3 assumptions when growing, succeeding with Bésame Cosmetics that proved wrong? And what's the learning? Whether before you crossed 1 million or like whatever that stage was, whether it was 500,000, 1 million, 5 million, what were the assumptions that you had, 1 or 2, and they proved wrong?
One assumption is people that I made, and that a lot of people make, I think, is just because you go into a retailer, it doesn't mean that the product will sell. Because really the marketing and the awareness has to come before it. It has to come from your side. The retailer is just putting it on the shelf. They're not promoting it. So just because it's on a shelf, it doesn't mean that it's going to be successful, because they are still going to expect you to actually get people to go to that store and have a mechanism to get people to go to that store and buy it. Then it's going to be very difficult to keep that retailer. Because the minute that they don't see traction in the sales, they're going to start to question whether you deserve to be on that shelf. So really, the part that I assumed and that other people assume is that just because you put it there, it's magically going to walk away. And it does not.
Yeah, products don't fly off the shelves, I tell people.
No, they do not. No, they need a lot of marketing, and marketing has to come from the brand. So when you put it in a store, you have to have at least a plan and a budget to market it, to get people to know that it's there and to go to that store, because that's what the store expects. They expect it to just sell. They are not going to necessarily do anything to help you with that. They have all these other brands in the store. It's up to you to get somebody to buy it, not them. They're just giving you the space. So that part is a huge assumption that a lot of times I made in the past, and it takes so much lift to get that to actually function. It takes a lot of marketing dollars and a lot of marketing work to get people to actually shop a brand. It's not just putting it there. Obviously, it's different depending on how much money you have to put it there, because if you're putting a whole bay in Sephora, people will see it, But you're talking major investment. But for any kind of indie brand that's starting out, I think, you're relegated to a little tiny shelf on the bottom somewhere. How is anybody going to find this, So unless you made a campaign and did videos and did something to tell people, hey, go buy my thing, it's here, and you have enough people looking at this, it's not going to necessarily move on its own. And that's where even larger brands have problems. If there is no traction of movement, the store is going to expect you to do something to get it to move, so they are not going to necessarily help you with that. And that's a misconception that I think a lot of people have, that the store somehow promotes your brand, and they do not necessarily, unless you pay them. So that's one misconception, I think. The other one, market fit, is another one that's a misconception. Just because you think the product is good, it doesn't mean that somebody else thinks, or the majority of people think, that it's good. So when I first started, I made that tiny lipstick. Some people thought it was cute, but the majority of the market thought it was a tester or sample or something. They didn't understand my concept. They had no idea what I was doing. It was too early to be a mini. The market didn't have those at the time. It was way too early as far as timing goes. So sometimes the market timing is off. And for me, it wasn't the time when people were into mini. So they thought it was some kind of a tester or something. At least the general public did. So to have something that doesn't fit, it takes so much education on the side of the brand to get people to understand, and that sometimes it might not be worth it, because you cannot educate everybody on what you're trying to do fast enough to get it to sell. So maybe testing it to see if there is fit with as little investment as possible is a good way to do it before you commit to larger runs of something that you're not sure that people really think is valuable.
I agree. And I'll summarize both. Velocity, you said, from the retail. I always say 95% of the job is velocity. And then 5% is getting inside retail. Everybody gets super excited about getting inside retail. And that's why with Bésame now you're going to boutique stores, and we'll come to that later.
Yes.
And the second thing that you mentioned about product market fit, about if you're too innovative, I love that, because if you're not innovative at all, you won't get the attention. Like, why should I try?
Yes.
But if you're too innovative, then you will not get adoption. So it's getting that delicate balance right. So you're able to wow the early adopters also. You're also able to make a case for the mainstream consumer why they should leave what they are doing or what they are not doing, why they should try. At the same time, if you're very difficult to adopt, then again, it's a challenge. I really feel for the entrepreneur. I mean, where does she go, right? What can she do? It's not that easy.
Brands that have like really elaborate applicators that are meant to help when people have disabilities or they can't really get things to line up correctly, and they're designed that way. Now, that's a product obviously has a market fit for certain people, but for the general market, most people don't see that as something that they need and are willing to pay for. And it takes so much education to tell the person, how do I use this? What does this do? So that whole thing just means more money. The more you need to convey to the consumer before they make a purchase, the more expensive it is, because you have to do more and more marketing lift to tell people all that information and get them to absorb it, which is really hard. It's very difficult to retrain somebody from something they already think. It's very, very difficult to do that.
I agree. And one solution that I recommend, if your brand is such a brand, is to use the channel to your advantage. Find the right fit channel. If you are a very technically advanced skincare brand, then use spa channel. They will educate on your behalf. So you don't have to dole those marketing dollars out. So like Olaplex did, or like K18 hair that got bought for $1 billion. This is where people go wrong, because everybody's chasing the Sephora and the Ulta. You start with people who will educate on your behalf, change the consumer behavior, how you can make it easy for the consumer to adopt, right? Perfect. No, love everything that you are saying. I always told you, you and I think alike. It's just that I'm not as great a designer as you are. I wish I were, but I am not. Even though I tried my... Sorry?
Yeah, you tried your best.
I tried my best with the slides. Yeah.
Yes.
But I could see, like, every time I would show the slides, Gabriela would be like, maybe he could change this here. Maybe that circle could go there. You have built an amazing tight-knit community with Bésame. Tell us, how cult is your cult community? The length that they are willing to go, for Bésame, because a lot of brands don't get it. They don't have cult consumers. No matter how many loyal consumers they have, they still don't understand what cult means. I've seen firsthand with your consumers, but I want you to share it with the audience. Like, what length they are willing to go for Bésame, your cult community. Just give us a couple of examples.
I'm amazed by the lengths that they go to. I really am. If we put a post and there are some negative people in the post, our people will go in and defend us on there. They will challenge the other person, or they will explain to the other person why they are wrong.
So like people who are trolling, people who try to troll you get policed or get explained, educated by your cult followers.
Yes, exactly. So they tell them, well, this isn't working for you because you're not using it correctly. This is the way that you're supposed to use it. This is what you're supposed. So it's like they're doing all of this without my asking them to do it. It's just amazing. I've had people come to our shop. We had a shop in Burbank for 10 years. And people have come to the shop and, pulled up the sleeves and they have tattoos of our product on their arm. And I was like, wow, you're very dedicated to have my lipstick tattooed on your arm. So there are people that are very passionate about it. I think because they feel connected to a group of people that are kind of underserved. And they feel empowered by that, and they actually have a voice there because they know we listen to them. They know that we do things for them, that we do events for them, that we are there for them. If they want to reach me, they know how to reach me. I'm available to people, so I'm very present in the brand. So I think it means a lot to them that there is somebody responsible, that they can say, hey, I like this, or hey, I don't like what you're doing. And that person's going to listen to them. I think that part is what keeps them engaged and why they've been customers for years and they don't switch, which is kind of interesting to me.
Perfect. Your brand never had any issue with creating a cult community, having the cult followers. And then you went into Sephora, you learned from Sephora. Sales were not low from Sephora. You were selling a few $1,000s per month from store, which is not bad at all. I would say they were reasonably strong sales, but just that the category, the buyer wasn't able to understand and see the future for the category. Like if he were to see your brand now, he would have seen that you had a plan to go from early adopters, from cult to magic to the mass, from magic to mainstream. So he couldn't see it. Because obviously he doesn't live inside your head. I don't blame him. Once you took the brand out of Sephora, you also realized that you need to think of an alternative to Sephora to enter the mainstream consumer market. And why did you feel the need, first of all, to expand to greater consumer base without losing your core? Obviously you want growth, but how did you think about it? And how you are redefining classic beauty for the modern times. Now you are also going the boutique route to touch more consumers. Let me just summarize my question to you. Now you want to go from magical to the masses. You first tried with Sephora, and even though you had very decent sales, for some disagreement or they couldn't see your vision or how you're going to build their category, you took back the products, and then I worked with you together on how to take the brand from early adopters to the mainstream consumers. And you are doing that by redefining classic beauty for modern times. So one is you will shed light on how you are redefining classic beauty, or making it more palatable for the contemporary consumer without sacrificing your soul, because that is critical, right? Because you don't want to do it in a way to lose your cult. So that is one, like how you are doing it, one. And then second, you touch on the boutique stores. How do you think they are a better partner, and how your relationship has been, and what you are doing with them?
Okay, that was always a very hard thing for us, is to keep our core consumers, but also kind of bridge to people that were not necessarily all of that. And to not make history just like boring history, but kind of something that you can kind of get an inspiration from, but then use for in your own way. It's not like one set way. So what we've been trying to do now with the site is kind of merge those things together so that I can show you examples from before, but then I can kind of take that and say, well, for now, you can kind of take this and make it look like this. And you can use this inspiration to do a look now. You can use the eyeliner from Egypt and translate it to a look that you can do now. And it looks very classic and it looks very cool. So it's kind of showing people where we're coming from, but also where they can go, instead of just showing where we came from, which we did before, but we didn't kind of connect the dots for them. And I think we needed to connect the dots because people didn't just jump from that and go, oh, I can take this and kind of do something. You kind of have to guide them. So we're kind of being more deliberate into guiding them to how to use this, to translate it to your own look if you want to try something with this. And as far as boutiques go, we had boutiques in the past, and boutiques are a great avenue for us because our experience is more personal. The brand itself is more personal. So it does better with the smaller selection, with a curated selection where people know this is a product by this person and it's made this way. And there's a reason why we stock it, because we think it's the best. Because those sales are entirely easier, and I have boutiques that perform really, really well. Perform like one of the Sephora stores would perform, and it's a boutique. Because they're fans, and they communicate that to the people that come. So they can move product, and we're eager to support them. We'll do whatever we need to do to support them. We'll send them free things, we'll send them bags, we'll send them swag, we'll send them all kinds of things so that they can also support their consumers and make the brand more of a mainstay in their store. So the more we help them, the more they help us, basically. But it is a relationship. It's more of a relationship that you have with these people, and you do have to invest the time for that, because it's not just a nameless person that is just putting in an order. It's a kind of a living, breathing kind of store that deals with the community, and you kind of need to know what's going on there. It requires a bit more time, but I think is entirely worth it for the type of experience that you can translate to the consumer, which in a bigger store you cannot. There is no way to translate that in a Sephora or in an Ulta, because it's not there. There's nobody there telling you a story about this brand. There's nobody there that's going to say, oh, this is the only lipstick we carry because this is the best one. It's not going to happen like that. So in a store like Sephora, I did events at Sephora when we were there. I did several events, and it's not the same feel. It's not the same crowd. It's basically you're just like one in the bunch kind of thing. People are gravitating to whoever's loudest, whoever is more out there. It's not by your kind of meek little tiny brand on the corner there. That's not how that works. So in those stores, you definitely don't have the advantage. You don't have the advantage unless you have the wherewithal to compete with that environment. You're basically in a pool that's very crowded, and it takes a lot to compete in that pool. So the boutiques give you a more curated personal experience that I think for the type of customers that we have, it works extremely well.
Perfect. How many boutiques you are in now?
About 100 of them, because we are very picky about which ones we're going with. But we are expanding that rapidly. We are searching for the boutiques. That Fair has worked very well, so that platform is very effective for boutiques. It works very well. So if you want to sell to boutiques, I highly recommend Fair if you're not on there, because it just makes it easier for people to order, and it makes it easier for you because they pay you first. So it's definitely helpful.
But how do you get in touch with the end buyer on Fair?
You don't until they order from you.
So once they order, then you develop a relationship, right? Yeah, that's good.
Yes,
Yeah,
that's correct. Good. Yeah, you can't reach out They haven't ordered yet, but you can, after they've ordered, yes, you can have all kinds of emails and relationship with them personally on there. You can talk back and forth. So it's very helpful though, because they handle all of the payments and everything else. So it's very helpful on your end to not have to bill people for things and all of that. So it makes it a lot easier for sure. There's also larger specialty boutiques that are very good. All of those are great. If it fits your brand, those are really good options. But the larger ones, you really have to be prepared for that and really be well funded for that in order to be successful. I think at this point in time, I don't think it's easy or even feasible to go into those stores without some capital to play with in order to really be successful.
And these 100 you started approaching after we finished the work and we decided to go with boutiques,
Yes.
right? Yeah.
Yes.
So a bit of self-promotion. I'll ask you a question. The classic beauty for the modern times, this direction, and then the whole look and feel, the messaging, the core promise, and how to go from early adopters to mainstream consumers and going to boutique routes and a lot of other stuff. Would you give me some credit that it was after we worked together and you took that direction and everything?
So. I think I work with a lot of strategists and a lot of people. I work with you, and really I think that you probably got it the closest and the best to what actually is the messaging for the brand, because everybody else either tried to go too far one direction or too far the other direction, like way too modern and too hip. I think that you probably got it the most accurate to what it actually, the brand is and the brand DNA is and all of that.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Also, the fact that I told you how to go to early mainstream through early adopters using your events, which you have just started.
We're just trying to gear up some new, because we make custom things take longer. So all our things take a while. So it's not something I can launch right away. A lot of things that I've been working on for like 6 months are ready to launch now. So we're just relaunching all of our cream rouges and relaunching our new lipstick components and all the other stuff that's going on. We are going to get to the events and some other collaborations later in the year too that I'm working on that are kind of fun, with more celebrity type people, some fun stuff. I like to do those projects. I like to do that and also work on movie things with people, because we still do props and color for films. So I get approached for all kinds of films, and I've done some really cool ones.
Which are the ones you just did? I don't think you did Oppenheimer.
No, not Oppenheimer. I didn't do Oppenheimer, no. But there's a new version of this movie that was done by William Hurt in the past. It was called Kiss of the Spider Woman. I don't know if you're familiar. And then some new Agatha Christie stuff that's coming out of the UK, which are fun. Some new films from her books and things. So a lot of interesting, like I get contacted by so many different people for different things. But it's a lot of fun to see what people are working on. I enjoy that part of it, especially seeing products on film. I don't know if you saw the one on Netflix called Cristela with Sofia Vergara.
I must
She's
have.
like a drug lord.
I know Sophia is very well. Yeah, she wears the red lipstick and everything.
Right. Well, in this movie, she's playing this character of this woman called Cristela, who was a big drug dealer in the 1970s. And that. So she has makeup on, all kinds of different things to make her look different. But she's wearing one of our colors, and she's actually putting it on, and you can see our container on one of the scenes. So that one was fun. She's wearing a color called Chocolate Kiss on there because it is from the 1970s, and I've worked with the makeup artist who did that movie, who did the prosthetics and the makeup for that film in the past, and he does vintage things of really cool makeup. So you can see it on that one, and that's one of the latest ones, I think, that's on screen right now.
Perfect. And I'll put one last shameless plug for myself because I'm not seeing you doing that enough, so I'll do it myself. We also, the direction for boutiques I had recommended and how to go about it. And we also worked on your innovation profitability, like your product. You remember initially when we started, how can you rationalize your assortment, how you need to look at it, increase your profit, like keep those products that are profitable and volume both. Had made some recommendations.
Yeah, that's the thing about it, that you have to keep your core products and your best-selling products in stock, because if when you run out of that, then definitely you see a dip. Keep your eye on the ball and make sure that those products don't go out of stock, unless that is the way that you're running the business. Like if you look at early, like Kylie, they did this on purpose, ran a certain amount or whatever, had it sell out and then brought it back, and just to create hype in the market. So if that's the way that you want to do it, I guess. But for continued revenue, it's better if your product is actually in stock.
Perfect.
Plus, you'll get docked from stores if it's not, actually. So if you are in any kind of larger retailer, if your product goes out of stock, they do not like that. They actually have penalties for that. That's not a good thing.
Yeah, out of stock is the number one reason brand loses sales, and retailer is very extremely averse to the idea. Do you know the number one reason a retailer makes money? It's not the product margin, is like the fourth. Number one way they make the money is the fees they take from you for real estate. Number two is the float.
Yeah.
So they'll take the products from you, they will sell, but they will pay you in 30 days, so they get float. They deposit the money in the bank, the interest. Some people don't understand retail very well, but with boutiques that won't be the case. Boutiques will pay you.
With boutiques. Yes, well, especially on Fair, because Fair actually fronts you the money and it gives them credit to pay it. So it's actually good for the retailer because they get 30 days, but you actually get your money faster. They do take a small percentage, but it's actually worth it because you get paid right away and you don't have to deal with any of those other logistical things. I think it's a worthwhile endeavor to use Fair. But the margin, people don't realize that larger stores don't pay you right away, and you have to float all that money, and that costs money, especially if that money was borrowed, because you're paying interest on money that you don't have and that is still floating. So the interest they earn on your money, you're paying it on the money you took out to do that. So it's a very delicate dance, that whole thing. That's why I think people go to VCs, because they want to just have a slush fund of money to use and not have to deal with profitability or waiting for monies to be able to manufacture more product and things like this, which if you are self-funded, you have to basically be on top of, because there is no slush fund to do that from.
I agree. Perfect. So moving on, I think we've had very good deep dive discussion on a lot of topics, from mistakes to retailers, etc. So we already covered the assumptions about scaling and growing a beauty brand. You have learnings with your own brand, but you also might have observed a lot of other beauty brands, right? And maybe you interact with them too, both primary and secondary interaction that you've had with them. What do you think they don't understand about growing and scaling their brands? I mean, you gave the example of boutiques. Now the cash is better, education is better. So all of that is covered. But beyond that, if you again want to stress on these, that's fine.
I think one of the most important things in scaling that I made mistakes with in the past is not hiring the right person for the job of cost. So instead of hiring somebody that actually has the skills that you need, you hire somebody for less that you think will just pick up the skills or could learn the job. And that is not really to your advantage, because they're learning and making mistakes on your brand.
On your money.
So that is something that I would definitely not do again, is work with people that have not proven that they have the skills to actually do what you needed to do. Because you might pay more for them, but if they are good at what they do, they will grow your business exponentially, so you will kind of make it up on the other side. But that's something very hard to understand at the beginning, when you're like looking at every penny and going, well, how am I going to pay this guy more than I pay myself? I don't make a salary, but I have to pay this person so much. But if that person can take you to a different level, then it's worth it to do that. because you can't do it on your own. You kind of need the certain skill sets to get to different places in the business. But you have to get the people who actually know how to do it and have done it before. And those are not the least expensive people, you know. But I think at a certain point it's worth it to actually consider that, because it's going to save you time, and in the end it will save you money, because you will be able to get there faster, you know.
I couldn't agree more. Like with this point, not just because it's about paying people money, but also because entrepreneurship, this is my theory. I mean, the ideas come to us, I must have read somewhere. My experience also tells me entrepreneurship is a race against time. It's a game of probabilities and resourcefulness, because life will get in the way. Sooner or later, if you're not getting traction, if you're not going where you want to go, you will lose your patience, you will lose money, you'll lose time, which is the biggest resource, and you will give up. And it's not a very intellectual exercise. Like, it's not that you have to solve Einstein's, equation or anything, but it's about like these fundamental principles. Like, you got to put your best in the shortest amount of time possible with whatever resources you have. So I'm absolutely with you. Like, it's, you buy cheap, you buy twice, right?
Exactly. Like you said, the time thing, you have a certain amount of time, and so you need to make sure that within that time you kind of seize the opportunities as they come, because you're not going to get that again necessarily, or it's going to be very hard to get it the second time. Like, looking back, if I had a team when I had Sephora, if I had brought in a team of people that were familiar to how to navigate Sephora or how to deal with the new buyer, because that's what happened. The buyer I had changed, and that buyer before understood and knew where we were going. The new buyer did not. And I could not really relate that well enough to convince them or otherwise. So if I had a different team of people that maybe knew how to manage those accounts, maybe I could have managed to keep that account. But I did not. Now, getting that opportunity back, maybe I will, maybe I won't. Who knows? But the thing is, that was the timing. That was the time that I needed to do it. So when things happen and you need to have the right people in place so that you can take advantage of those opportunities and not let them pass by, because they're very hard to repeat, for sure.
I'm with you, and I feel for you, and you're absolutely right. But this is also very difficult, like you said. It's not that easy for an entrepreneur to do. Obviously, she's made it so far, and then she has to think about the outlay of money, etc., right?
Right.
And people usually take risks in increments. But when such a situation arrives, now you got to like really up your game and hire 2 or 3 times more, or to pay that much money. And you're just not used to it. So an advisor who has seen this end game, I tell, this is a tip for every beauty founder, that you should work with somebody who knows the end game. Like what all it takes. In beauty, minimum viable product doesn't work. Like the lean startup speaks about it. You just throw something out there and learn and pivot. But the problem is you run out of time. So if you do not put your best foot forward, you cannot do many pivots because you won't have money left. That's why it's better to go into the battle as prepared as possible. But yeah, amazing insights, Gabriela. No, even if you're a very soft speaking person, your brand is a testament to how much knowledge and experience you have in terms of succeeding with a venture. The insights that you're dropping are really remarkable. So, your next big goal now, as much as you want to share with the audience, what is the next big goal for Bésame, and what do you see as the biggest hurdle to that goal?
Well, we're trying to, like I said, grow the retailers at this point and grow the boutiques out to a few hundred of them, so that we have more of a larger footprint, and then we can really go into doing events or things at different boutiques, at different places, but also do more collections with people that are really interesting, so that they attract different audiences, and we can also share those collections with the boutiques, because it's been very difficult in the past to share those special edition collections with any retailer, because they kind of come and go. It's not something that stays on. It's a capsule type of thing. Because of the nature of it, it's very hard to deal with shipping it or doing anything with a larger retailer for something like that. So with the boutiques, having more of them and being able to share those types of things will also add some kind of newness to it. And if we could do something with those celebrities and things, it would be a lot of fun to do events with them or some kind of meetups with them, because I think they're all very interesting people and they could bring a lot to the table as far as like their experiences and stuff like that, which I think is fun. I have a lot of ideas as far as getting more interactive with people, because our crowd and our group like to interact. You know, they like to live things. I love to do that, to do events where people are immersed in something. Like I take you back to this nightclub from 1960 and then I show you what that was like and kind of bring in the whole vibe of the place. Stuff like that is really interesting to do. It takes a bit of lift, of course, to do stuff like that, because it takes some production to do that, but it's so much fun. People just have a blast because it's not kids that are going to this, it's adults, but it's kind of like almost going into a fantasy thing. You're somebody else, you're somewhere else. And people just really enjoy it. It's kind of a memorable thing to do for people because it's kind of personal to them. They get to be in somewhere else. They get to enjoy something that they think only kids do, but it's not for kids. You know, those things are fun. I enjoy that kind of more personal type of interaction with the customer. So I'm looking forward to doing more of that, but also expanding out. We have some international expansions and things going on because we are on Amazon. We have an Amazon shop. I've done a few commercials for them and a few things, which was a lot of fun. They were very nice. They have beautiful studios in Seattle, so I went over there and did some things with them. But it's a lot of fun, and I think they have a lot of initiatives around women-owned business and things like that. So it's nice to feel some support from these huge companies as far as smaller manufacturers are concerned. So there are opportunities. You just have to be open to them. If you are kind of a minority business or a Latin business or woman-owned business or any type of special group.
Cool. I have two follow-up questions, but before that, and then the follow-up question, what is your biggest hurdle? Like, do you have a goal in mind? And the hurdle, but before that, these boutique stores, they look forward to you doing such things, right? They're very excited by all of this versus big retailers. Second, they're easy to manage the logistics. And third, it doesn't cost hardly any money. Like, you don't have to pay them any money. So that is amazing. But I have two follow-up questions. How will you manage the rollout of collection to every boutique if you have to do an event? And second, wouldn't you want to do a more contemporary event, like your classic beauty marrying the modern times? Wouldn't you want that event to have the perfect representation? Like if it's 1960s club, you said, right? 1960s. How would you marry? Where would you create that experience? How would that event take place? How will you manage the logistics of it? Like if it will be a rollout of one collection to, let's say, 100
Right.
boutique stores, how would you do it?
As far as the boutiques in-store events in boutiques, you can have ambassadors in all these places go and do events at different places. So you can hire people in those areas to go and do the events for you. We can go and do events, but also obviously you would have to pick like your top shops and kind of do events at those shops. So you can't be everywhere. That obviously you can't do all of them. The other one, it's something that has to be produced. It's not something that you just rent a space. You kind of have to make it so that it's an experience. People go and they're there. You know, you have a band, you have a thing, you have a bar. It's like a whole thing. So it takes some production to do this. You have to interact with a bunch of people. It's kind of like planning a wedding almost.
So you hire a event management company, right? And you work with them?
You can.
How do you do it?
Well, we've done it ourselves by hiring different people to do different things, you know. So you have a company that brings the bar and the bartenders and the musicians, bands, things. So it's kind of like planning a whole event. So it's not a small feat. It takes some doing because you have to decorate, light, the whole thing. But when people come, they don't forget that. because you brought this memory to them. Because we had an event once, I can tell you, when we did the collection for Peter Pan and the mermaids of the lagoon with Peter Pan for Disney, we rented one of the ballrooms at the Disneyland Hotel that was underground. It was underneath, so you had to step down. So we did this ticketed event where it was a under the sea prom for adults.
Wow.
The people who came were not kids. They were people maybe that they never went to a prom. They never went to the prom when they were in high school. So they came to the prom with their husbands and had a great time. So that customer will never forget that because you gave them this experience. So at this prom, we had a photo thing. They could take pictures. We had a band. We played the music. We had hors d'oeuvres. We had cake. It was like a whole thing going on in there. It was a very inexpensive ticket to get in, but we sold the room out. We couldn't fit any more people in there. We had 300 people and we had to turn away a ton of people because we couldn't fit any more people in there. People just had a great time. It was just fun, just clean fun. That's all it was. I think that kind of thing leaves a lasting impression. It's not like a press event.
I know it's an experiential event.
Yeah, I've done press events before, and it's not a press event. There were no influencers. It wasn't intended for the press. It was just intended to be fun for the customer. So that's all that we cared about. There wasn't an agenda or anything on the event, which is probably not great for marketing, but it was great for them to remember us by.
It's great for marketing. This is the best kind of event you can do. Just like you said, it's experiential, right? I love it.
So for this kind of thing, for doing events like that, it's about kind of taking somebody somewhere else, mentally taking them somewhere else, and then physically taking them somewhere else. There's a ton of locations here that I could do something in that people have not been in. I could make it all kinds of things, but it takes some doing because these are not inexpensive to put on, but they are extremely memorable and they're hugely attended. It's very easy to get people to come to this because they will have a good time. They've been to events before. That's kind of what we do. And selling the makeup is kind of like second. We're not a pressure type company. You need to buy this or that. It's kind of a secondary thing. But you'd be surprised when you don't ask how many people feel like they would need to buy something because you gave them something and they want to give it back. It's kind of reciprocity thing. People just feel like they owe you.
I agree. Like even Mail in Strom said this, you say this, I don't know marketing, it's not good marketing. This is the perfect marketing. You build enough desire, you will never have to sell. You don't have to sell anything.
Yeah, it does.
You just don't follow the conventional guidelines, and people who tell you this is not marketing are idiots because this is the epitome of marketing, right? And what do human beings value the most? Experience. When you're talking about 100 boutique stores, so you do an event in their city and then tell them that you can buy these products there, or you will do these events in partnership with these boutiques at some place, or will it be at the boutique store?
We usually do them at the boutique because you want them to invite people there and you want to invite your people there, and then you bring in some food or some drinks or something, and it just kind of like, it's something that the customer can get to know you. They feel more connected to the brand because we're there. They can ask questions. There's somebody there to tell them. Like when I go to any of these events, people ask me all the time, what color should I wear? You know, which one is the color that I should wear? So I'm kind of analyzing people's color like all day long because I'm looking at them and going, okay, well, you could wear this, you could wear that, you could wear this. And then some people are okay with that and they pick from that. Other people just go, you're the expert, you tell me which one to wear. I do not know what to wear. I had a lady tell me exactly that. She said, I am a teacher, I'm an expert in that, but you're an expert in this. You tell me which one I should be wearing. So I had to pick the one for her. So I do that every time I go places. I will look at people and recommend different coloring depending on their complexion, their eyes, their hair, basically kind of taking into account the coloring of their whole face, not necessarily just their skin.
If you remember, we always had that talk, right? And this is what I want
yes.
beauty founders to
Yeah.
know, that you don't have to do what everybody else is doing. And with these boutiques, even if you are spending some money, you will do a very easy cost benefit calculation, because the boutique will buy products from you. So if you do a yearly P&L analysis, you will make profits with such initiatives, right? You will make it in 3 or 4 months easily, even if you have to invest some money in the event. Whereas with the other marketing, when you acquire consumers from Instagram or retailers, it takes years sometimes to recover the money that you have spent. And plus, you never know how that money was spent, like whether somebody just bought it for discount. Whereas in, like you said, experience will create the highest loyalty and advocacy. So this is the right way to go. And for every brand, it's different. If it's a brand that doesn't create a romantic experience like yours, it could be something else, right? It could be an experiential demo with their product in a setting that their motivated, loyal fans, the problem that you solve, people who are most motivated by that problem, would want such an experience. So it has to be different for everyone. But this is a very smart and a very authentic way of doing stuff.
I understand the whole thing about buying ads and getting people to buy things, but you have to be so careful with that, because you're bringing in consumers, like you said, because maybe it's a price, they're getting a discount or something.
I think you froze.
But those are not necessarily going to be long-term customers. Might buy it because it's inexpensive and they're going to try it or something, but those are not really your long-term customers. You really haven't convinced them of anything. They're just kind of taking advantage of that promotion or whatever. So it's really difficult. I think I'm not a fan of growing a brand by just spending over and over again on Facebook and Instagram advertising and just spending money. I was never a fan of that, because I think those are kind of artificial customers. They're not real customers, because they're not sticking around necessarily. You constantly have to buy more, kind of.
I agree. That's so bang on. And I think only a designer can say this, somebody who understands how to design products, create an experience. So absolutely love this. Like, I really wish more founders would do this. Get to the basics, not follow the herd. Look at the core problem they solve, the core emotional promise they offer to their consumers, and create an experience around the same, and work with the partners who will love you instead of going straight away. There is a time and place for big retailers, and if you have the budget and if you have some backing and that is what you want to do, that's fine. But for all the others, like who keep struggling, this is the best way to build business. It might be slightly slower, but it will be much more sustainable, and it will be much more rewarding to you personally as a founder as well. So absolutely love everything that you say. Like, this is a perfect example of how brand strategy should be done, how you should create a cult community of core super fans. So I'm absolutely with you. Coming to now, when the going gets tough, what was the lowest time in your entrepreneurial journey? Like, and how bad was it? Did you believe you would overcome, or did everything seem lost and, what do they call it? Deus ex machina, when it's like the divine intervention saves the day. Like, everything is done for. Just like in Saving Private Ryan, when Tom Hanks is shooting, like his back is with the tank, and suddenly the American Air Force comes, right? So like everybody had thought that he'll also die, he'll be shot or whatever. I think he does die. But like other guys get saved, or the private gets saved. So what was the lowest time in your journey? What was the situation like, and how did you overcome?
I would say that probably the lowest part was when we were in New York and we had our line at Henry Bendel's for a while. We kind of were a group of people that were kind of managers, whatever, were helping with the brand. We're kind of managing the brand from over there because we weren't in New York. So we hired these people to kind of manage that. And unfortunately, these people didn't have the same idea of what profitability is. So they would spend so much money on the employees and personnel, because you had to have your own person at Henry Bendel's at the time. Like, we had a counter, but you had to pay your own employee to be at the counter. And it was a requirement to have an employee all the time. And these people were open from the morning to like 7 o'clock at night. So you had to have staff there for that entire time, every day, basically. So it was getting extremely expensive there to keep the staff because people wanted more and more money, and people that actually worked well would want more money. And then other brands would be poaching your person all the time. If you had a salesperson that was good, another brand would offer them more money to poach them from you. It was really wild at that time in New York, and I'm talking maybe 15 years ago or more. But anyways, they spent so much money that we were going into the negative, basically. There was no profit at all, and we couldn't maintain it. It was like, we can't do this because there is no profit. We don't have money to keep manufacturing. So we had to leave that relationship and leave the store, because even though to the store we were selling well, the brand was selling, it was working, but all the profit was out the window. There was no money, and we could not maintain it. We didn't have other funding to maintain that. So it was what people call now like a vanity store, I guess you would call it a vanity store. But again, you have to be able to afford that kind of thing. It's a store on Fifth Avenue, and it's very trendy, high profile shop. So it was kind of really cool. It was a very cool shop. We didn't have the money to maintain. So we had to leave the store. And that was probably one of the hardest things, because we just kept questioning ourselves. Are we doing the right thing? Because it's good for the brand. It has good visibility and everything, but we just couldn't afford it anymore. And that was probably one of the hardest. The management people over there said, well, you're kind of killing your brand by leaving and this and that. And it's like, well, but I can't sustain it. So it was a lot of really difficult conversations, difficult time at that time to keep the brand going. We had to mortgage our house, and then we finally had to sell it because we couldn't maintain. We had a period where we kind of like basically were all in. Basically, we had no house. We moved in an apartment. We just like kind of had to start it all over again. So there was a lot of times like that. Need to have a level of tolerance for adversity and resilience to keep going, even though you think it's just gonna all go down the drain. So you kind of have to keep yourself motivated somehow. So it takes a kind of that level of persistence. You have to pepper that in with also the realization that maybe sometimes things aren't correct, and you should just not pursue it anymore because it's not going to work. But that's up to each individual person to figure out. Boy, things get thrown at you left and right, and money just ebbs and flows, comes and goes and comes and goes, and you kind of have to be comfortable with periods where it goes and then it comes back, and so forth. You can't be like stuck with like, this is my lifestyle and I have to maintain it. So you have to be okay with basically shifting as your business shifts.
Did you ever encounter a time a year where you had gone into huge debt or huge losses? Was this the same, or it never happened in the last decade?
The year before was particularly bad because the economics weren't good. It was like pandemic, and then after pandemic kind of thing. A lot of events came back, but people weren't that comfortable going to larger events. And we had booked a very large trade show that we put a lot of money into that, and it didn't deliver what it was supposed to deliver. So there were a lot of losses from that. So we're still recovering from those losses from 2 years ago, because it was such a huge hit. Because we had done this show before and it delivered X amount of money, and then this time it just totally did not. But we invested, more money into it. It was a tough blow because the velocity of sales wasn't there. People were just not as interested, or they were tapped out. They had already spent all their money on other things, or they really didn't want to go out yet into larger crowds. There was a lot of instability going on after that period of time. It was very difficult to recover from those expenditures that never really paid out.
But over like the decade and a half that you've been in the business, you have made enough money to justify the venture. You were always entrepreneurial. I don't think you worked in the corporate for that long. You did, but you also had your business with
Yes.
your husband, right? Design firm, etc.
Yes.
So
yes.
the opportunity cost, let's say you had gone and done the design business. You feel this was the right decision and you have reaped fruits? Yes or no?
Yes, definitely. I mean, obviously, you can make more with your own company than you can be working for somebody else. I mean, that's for sure. Once the business is profitable and you're making money, you can obviously earn way more money working for yourself than you can for somebody else. But again, it depends on what you like, because some people just like the routine of going somewhere, doing their job, and at 5 o'clock they leave and that's it. With your own business, it's never like that. You're always kind of on because it's on your brain, because this is what you do.
I listened to Kevin O'Leary. You leave a 40-hour job to start an 80-hour job, 80-hour business.
And that's the thing. People don't seem to understand that it's not a button you turn it off. I admire people who can do that. I personally cannot. Some people say you should be able to have your own life separate from. I haven't found that yet, or been able to do that yet. But I think that if you are a self-starter type of person and you enjoy this type of lifestyle, that it's a great lifestyle. If you are more of a person that craves like a kind of a normal type of thing, and I always get my check this date, probably entrepreneurial pursuits are not suited, because there isn't that kind of certainty. There's always fluctuations in businesses, ebb and flow. They move like water. But that's the challenge. You always have to keep moving, and you have to adjust as the current flows. Move quickly and solve things. Because the hardest part, I think, about entrepreneurial lifestyle is the fact that you have to make decisions, a lot of decisions, all the time, and make them quickly. And that is very tiring, exhausting to the brain, to constantly have to make decisions. It's a lot easier to not decide anything, to not have to choose anything. Because if you look at a consumer, for example, if there's too many choices, what do? They don't choose any.
Yeah, the paradox of choice. Yeah.
But in business, you have to. That's the whole point. You have to make decisions constantly, and that is very tiring on the brain. And if you're not used to that, it can get very taxing very quickly. Business is a series of choices. And the thing is that you have to make more of the better choices and less of the bad ones.
That's a very nice way of putting it. I loved it. Let's move to now the speed round. You've elaborated on every deep dive question extremely well. Great nuggets of wisdom, some amazing insights about building a brand community, changing course with boutique stores, create experiences which consumers value the most. Let's move on to speed round. I'll pose a question, a phrase, or a word for you, and you have to respond in 1, 2, 3 words, maximum 1 sentence, not more than that. That's the whole essence of this round. If you want to talk more, that's fine. But it's just to distinguish between the sections of the podcast, right?
Sure.
So first is classic beauty.
I would say it's timeless. It's always in good taste.
I would have said romantic, but yeah, that's fine. That's
it is
my
romantic
take.
too.
Yeah,
Yes.
perfect. What's your favorite movie line quote of all time?
It's an Albert Einstein quote, and it goes, "Life is like riding a bicycle. To keep your balance, you must keep moving."
Love it. Love it. Amazing. Yeah. See, that's a quintessential entrepreneurial quote. Even though Einstein wasn't quite an entrepreneur, maybe he was, right?
Yes.
He gave the most innovative theory on the planet, so we can call him an innovator or an entrepreneur.
Yes.
Romance. What do you think of romance?
Romance, I think it's subtle. Romance is something subtle. It's not a huge outwardly gesture or anything like that, but it's subtle things that are romantic, I think. To me, anyways.
Well, I have this original line that the best romance never quite culminates into an actual relationship, but it always stays on the fringe of converting but never quite
Yes.
does. So it is never sullied by familiarity, and you have those
Right.
cherished memories for life.
No, it's true. No, I agree with you 100% because a lot of very famous romances are people that it was a purely platonic relationship, but they kind of had a kind of a melding of like minds, and there was something in common that they found within the other person, and it transcends the body, sexuality, and all of that.
I agree. Like it's not transactional at all. And
No.
it is always in the air. Like love is in the air. It always stays in the air. So the butterflies are
Yes.
always there, and infinite possibilities, right?
No, it's true. No, it's very true, and I think that's why people that are more conservative like our line, because we are romantic, but not in a sexual way, because it really has nothing to do with sexuality or showing that kind of thing, because it kind of does transcend that. It's beyond that, actually.
Love it. Absolutely love it. See, I told you, your line is very intellectual. Red lipstick.
Oh, I'm going to go with the one from Ted Lasso. Red lipstick is life. From the show Ted Lasso, the football player that says soccer is life.
So-
It's like, well, red lipstick is life.
That's very original, actually. I thought you would say when you're having a bad day, just put on a red lipstick and go out and you'll
Oh,
feel
yeah,
great.
yes,
But what you said
yes,
is very
yes.
original. Grandmas.
Grandmas are living history. That's what they are. It's a connection to the past that you have to cherish, because then it goes away.
This is deep. Trendy. Your thoughts on trendy?
Trendy fades. I don't like things that fade. I prefer things that are good now, tomorrow, and the next day. And trend is so fleeting that I think it's dangerous to stay on trend. Because trend is unfortunately a way to tell people that you're not good enough if you're not on that trend. And that's not where we stand. We stand with things that are always in good taste, always look good, and no matter what the trend is. We don't necessarily follow those.
And you don't feel that if you are not in with the times, you fall behind? Because there's also this perception that, hey, like for example, I'm 46, even though I'm not that old, but if like, let's say somebody who's 60 might say, and I've heard some older people say this, that be in touch with the young crowd to stay alive at heart, right? To stay young at heart, it helps to be in touch with the younger generation. Like a lot of people say that you should be in sync with the times, not that you become them,
Right.
but maybe
No,
that's why you're
I-
merging classic with modern beauty, right? With the modern times, not
I
with
know.
modern beauty.
I
Yeah.
mean, I understand what you're saying, and I think that being in touch with what's going on, it doesn't mean you have to follow it, though. Just because all of the girls are saying you have to wear such and such hoodie, it doesn't mean that I'm going to do that. But I understand what they're doing, and I can see what they're doing. I can see the trends. I appreciate some of them, but it doesn't mean that I have to participate in them personally. That's kind of my viewpoint on that. I think it has to be your choice if you participate on it or not. But you shouldn't feel like a trend is an order for you to follow and you have to do this or else you're old. It shouldn't be that way. I don't believe that.
That's the perfect ending I could have received to the speed round. Keep abreast with the trends, what's happening. You should be aware, but doesn't mean that you have to follow it. And it's your choice. You should not feel forced, or you should not feel that you have to do it to enhance your self-worth or anything. If it comes from within and you feel like doing it, do it. Otherwise, stick to who you are. Absolutely amazing episode, Gabriela. Everything that you said. And even when we used to do our one-on-one calls, they always stretched to a couple of hours at least. Every time I presented to you, it was so much fun working not only with your brand, but listening to your thoughts and how intelligently you have created and designed this brand. You are also making it palatable for the contemporary consumer without the need to follow trends. In a way, you have reinvented Bésame Cosmetics to appeal to the modern consumer, just because you want to make that difference to them also, because I feel they're getting lost with everything that we just discussed with this social media, with following trends, no makeup look, which takes more time than makeup, and it doesn't make you look like no makeup, it makes you look like heavy makeup, in the end, like you're concealing everything rather than enhancing who you are. So absolutely amazing insights on business, how to build a brand, how to work with retailers. I would say to people, they should bookmark this episode, they should download it, save it, and especially beauty founders, they should go and watch it every now and then. And each one of them should go and buy and try the Bésame products once. I promise you, I've never used makeup in my life, but I've lived applying Bésame vicariously through the cult following that Gabriela has built. And I could, if I ever have been tempted to try a red lipstick on, it was with Bésame. Where I felt, my God, let me try it and see what is the magic that these women keep referring to. So over to you, Gabriela, to end, any message that you have for the audience, anything that you want to say, anything that is upcoming, any collection, whatever you want to share.
Well, if we go to our website, if you want to find out more about what we're doing, I mean, we are, eco-friendly just because it happens to be a vintage thing to do. So it's not that we're trying to be friendly to the environment. That's great, but everybody says that. But we are doing it because that's the way it was done. So we have a lot of refillable products, like our compacts are all refillable. We have all kinds of refills that you can buy, so you can buy the compact and you pick your refill and then you just continue to refill it. And we have several versions of that. We make special editions of it. I'm even doing now shadows that will be refillable, and you can get them with 4 things inside, but then if you run out of one color that's your favorite, you can just replace that one. You don't have to buy the whole thing again. It's just common sense stuff that we're doing. But if you want to take a look at our website, and as far as collections that we're doing, there are some interesting things at the end of the year. I can't say who I'm working with yet, but it is a musician that I'm working with this time.
It's not Taylor Swift, right? I don't think it's Taylor Swift. No. Let me guess. Gwen Stefani?
No, I don't think you'll guess.
Then maybe I won't be able to. I take your word.
She is very famous, and she had different looks depending on the eras, and that's what we were going to be exploring, is those particular looks. But she is an iconic person.
Not Madonna, but, right?
No, Madonna, no. But anyway, I'll stop there before you went again. So it's going to be a fun collection we're working on together, and it is a very personal thing, because it's not kind of a collaboration like I've done with Disney and a larger company where you just get the IP and your version of their IP. This is kind of working together on making something that really expresses her look in that period. So it's kind of fun for me because I get to actually interact with a person instead of nothing. But if anybody has any questions on anything else, if they need advice on anything, or they want to know about licensing, because I've done quite a bit of years of licensing for all kinds of companies. If you need help with that or anything else, I'm at Bésame Girl on Instagram. That's my personal Instagram handle. So if you DM me on Instagram, DM me on Bésame Girl, I will answer any questions that you might have and offer anything I can to help anybody that trying to navigate this business. It is a very complicated business. It's a very crowded business. So you really do need to do something other than something that's trendy. You kind of, if you want a long-lasting business, it needs to be beyond a trendy product or a trendy ingredient. There needs to be a bit more to it, I think, in order to last a longer period of time.
I couldn't have asked for a better ending for the episode. If you want to last, don't merely go after trends. It needs to be beyond the trend. And also, any ladies listening, I won't recommend it to men, but it depends upon your taste. If you want to know how to get that pulled together perfectly romantic look and which lipstick will suit you the best, message Gabriela on Bésame Girl. She will educate you for free. Well, thank you so much, Gabriela. It was absolute pleasure and fun, as always, to listen to your thoughts and doing this podcast. And I look forward to many more to come. You have a wonderful evening ahead. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you for listening. Don't forget to subscribe to this What Beauty Founders Don't Know podcast for amazing guests and insights on growing your beauty brand. Visit jumpaccelerator.com and take the quiz to find out how ready you are to make the jump to $20 to $50 million plus dollars. And above all, don't miss out on your free online course taken by hundreds of successful beauty founders. Sign up for your free online course now. Till the next episode.